Howdy, soldiers. Oops, it's dark. I meant to film earlier today, and then suddenly it was 8 p.m. So we're gonna film this in my lair, but don't worry, I've learned my lesson. I'm not drinking coffee anymore after hours. Today, I'm just having an iced tea that definitely doesn't have whiskey in it. Also, if you wish to clinically diagnose what's going on with my hair today, I'd be much obliged. Welcome to my July wrap-up. I don't know what happened, but July was here and gone, and I somehow managed to read 8 books. But I'm only gonna be able to talk to you today about 7 of them. Why not? Why can't you talk about all of them? Oh my god, so mysterious. I gotta stick around and subscribe. July's reads were a little all over the place, but I think I can thematically condense it into 3 categories, and that was cozy fantasy, crime, and cannibalism. We have some casual necromancy, some people trying to figure their lives out, and this one space erotica that is eating at me. Literally. So without further ado, grab a drink, grab a snack, and buckle in. Join me as we go over the 7 books that I managed to read in the month of July. Ooh, should I rank them? That could be fun. Okay, let's do least favorite to most favorite. So definitely least favorite. And that one. Okay. Great, ranked. Number 1, my least favorite of the month. I feel so bad saying because I wanted to love this book so much because it's queer, it's kinky, it's poly, it's a cosmic space erotica that had massive tonal problems, and that was Comet Cruise by Niskamaro. The author sent me a PR box with this and all these other goodies, and she was so sweet, and she wrote me the nicest card, and I feel so bad, but girl, what happened here? Babe, wake up, sexy Wall-E prequel just dropped. It's 2126 and humanity has ruined our planet, so the very wealthy are going on these cosmic cruises into space to escape it all. And our main character Talus fakes her identity to be able to get aboard one of these ships when a childhood friend of hers goes missing. And these ships are full of orgies and hedonistic sex, and while she's getting involved with people on the ship, she's trying to unravel what's really going on and then unearths this bigger space conspiracy than she ever could imagine. This started off strong because not only are we getting spicy kinky sex, but we're also getting climate activism and what it means to be a political terrorist and digital access conversations. And because the ship is made for poly kinky people, there's great dialogue on negotiation and consent. But then about halfway through, we just go balls to the wall and it gets weird. The plot of Talus trying to find her friend Xena is barely there, and then eventually we meet her and then she's just gone in like a page and a half. Literally a page and a half is all we get from her, and then we're moving on. We never talk to her ever again. So that I thought was strange. I thought we were gonna have more time with her, or she was gonna be more involved directly in the plot. And as Talus is getting more involved with the people on board, and she's realizing that like some of them are committing space crime, the tonal inconsistency of this was wild, because it's like, tee-hee, we're having a threesome, and then the next scene is like, this guy went and ripped out his own eye and then got shot into an airlock into the abyss of space. And then the next scene is like, new play pod just opened up, let's have an orgy. And it was just like, oh my god, girl, whoa. Also, the last 100 pages are 6 characters in a pod in space slowly going insane and eating one another. And not in a sexy way, like in a traumatizing way. We go from fun, sexy space mystery into literally losing our minds and turning to body mutilation and cannibalism. One of the wildest things I've ever read, truly. Like, this did not give me what was advertised on the can. And I'm so disappointed because this is the kind of story that I want when I think of romantasy or like romancify, where you talk about really heavily integrating romance, sex, intimacy into a story. So I was like, oh, this is gonna be perfect. And then it was not perfect for me, I'll say that. Absolutely bananas, B-A-N-A-N-A-S. My second least favorite is this boy right here. It is The North Wind by Alexandria Warwick. This book isn't bad, it's fine, and I didn't want it to be fine. A new adult romantasy that is based on Hades and Persephone and Beauty and the Beast, and y'all know I am a fiend for a Hades and Persephone retelling. For hundreds of years, the land of Edgewood has been encased in ice, and they are protected from the monsters of the Deadlands beyond their lands by something called the Shade, which is like this magical barrier that the Frost King lives behind. And every 30 years, love that it doesn't say, okay, every so many years, years, the Frost King will come down to the land and take a human bride to help replenish the magic of the shade. And this year, Ren's sister Elora has been chosen. So Ren pulls a secret switcheroo, sneakily swaps with her sister, and then is taken to this land. And oh hey, we're learning more about each other and about the backstory and why the magic is failing, and maybe we actually fall in love. Started off strong, had a breakdown. Bon appetit. Yet again, really strong start. I love this world building that we're getting with like the four winds being exiled gods and how they are corrupting the magic around them, and then this town that's always hungry and trying to reach for more outside itself, and how Ren is so protective of her younger sister. And Ren is also an alcoholic, so we have like an addiction and recovery story in this as well. And I didn't love Boreas at first. I thought he was a little too inhumanly cruel. But as you get to know him a little bit more, it's like, oh, you're just socially awkward and have bad coping mechanisms. It is a wicked slow burn, and I love that it took them so long to admit that they were even friends. Like, I think that that was really well paced out. But the character development goes really back and forth of like, did we even make progress? And why are we not sticking with it? And a lot of the themes were not super well integrated. It was a lot of like, let me monologue about my feelings. And Miss Ma'am, it is 2024. Do we really need one of those like corsets are torture devices scene? Really? So it wasn't horrible, but I wanted more. Disappointed. Thirdly, it was a throwback nostalgia read for me, and if you watched one of my last videos was a secondhand book haul where I found a copy of a book that I had read so long ago, and so of course I had to reread it this month, and that is Working for the Devil by Lily St. Croix. A neo-paranormal sci-fi world that's a little bit like Fifth Element meets Underworld, about a necromancer who takes on a bounty hunting job for the devil himself. And in taking this job, Dante gets herself assigned a demon familiar who he himself is on this mission for his own reasons, and then it turns out that the demon she's hunting is actually someone that she's had a horrible past with, and through this bounty hunt we involve other scions and other witches and then learn some bigger conspiracies about what hell is missing. And I read this back when I was probably too young to read this. The way that she describes hell has stuck with me for 14 years. That's how good of a writer she is, because we physically go to hell at one point. The red light always looks wet, and how the walls and the floor are just off that crucial millimeter, so you're constantly on edge, and how the prince's eyes look radioactive. It was something I did not pick up on when I was 15, and yet I deeply engage with now, is that Dante is out here like raising government-sanctioned criminals from the dead and doing like a tiny bit of crime and accepting deals from the devil because she's trying to pay off her mortgage. And you know what? Same. Like, we love a working girl. And honestly, I might get into some casual necromancy if it pays that well, because my mortgage rates just went up. And I also respect that after going through a lot of weird stuff with some infernal beings, Dante just has a little mentee bee. And you know, honestly, I think we should see more of that. Now, this did come out in 2005, and it unfortunately reads very 2005. There's a couple of things in here where I'm like, oh, you can't say that nowadays. But something I didn't pick up on that really shocked me was that Dante is a bicon? Like, okay, 2005 Lily St. Croix. I didn't remember that Dante fully had a relationship with a woman. And that's part of her tragic backstory, is that that's why she wants to take down this demon cabal, because they killed her lover. And I'm like, okay, like, sure, we're a bit fatphobic in this, but like, we stand a bisexual queen. This also had way more of a devastating ending than I remember it having. Like, this whole rhetoric of like, don't leave me to wander this earth alone. I was like, oh my god. Also, I may have led people astray in the haul video, because I said I think this man, Jaff, I think he has horns. He does not have horns. He has wings. That's right. Jafir Amal is the original Bat Boy. So yeah, I had a very fun little dip into nostalgia time for a couple of days. And I might have to read the rest of the series. Next up is a rom-com about straight people making bad decisions in the wilderness, and that is Finding Mr. Right by the one, the only, the queen, Kelly Armstrong. Just like how Lily St. Croix is a pillar in my paranormal reading growing up, so is Kelly Armstrong. She has written thrillers and paranormal stuff and historical stuff, and now she's writing romance. Like, what can't this queen do? It's also been well documented that I love books about books or books about book people, so I'm already predisposed to being biased towards this, and I did very much so enjoy it. So our main character Daphne is like super fucking cool. She is an architect who designed and built her own home in the Yukon on land that she bought, and then just like her and her dog just like hanging out, and she writes books, and her latest book has just gone to this giant bidding war. She's getting all this hype and attention. There's gonna be book tours and money, but only because she submitted it under a male pen name, and now the entire industry thinks that she's a guy. So she hatches a plan to hire a guy named Chris to play her pen name alter ego Zane Revington. But Chris ends up actually not being an actor, he's an accountant, and he has all these wrong ideas about how he's supposed to act as this persona. And though the two of them butt heads at first, as the media descends upon them in their remote Yukon town, they open up to one another, and then the gloves come off and more things come off. Daphne has to decide whether she's actually going to come clean to the industry or what's going to happen between the two of them. This is hilarious. I was laughing out loud within the first 30 pages. Like, at one point they're at the house in the Yukon and Chris is like, what am I gonna do? I don't have anything to do. Maybe I'll go chop some wood. Yeah, it's like a manly thing that would be like helpful. And so then he goes out and he goes to chop wood, and Daphne just comes running out of the house like, what are you doing? You're holding the axe wrong, you're gonna hurt yourself. And also, I chopped enough wood for like all winter. Like, don't even worry about it. We're challenging gender roles and traditional masculinity, and there's no like weird jealous exes or catty girl fights. We look into the unfortunately still very rampant misogyny of the publishing industry. And though their first interaction is a little bit misleading, I love that the miscommunication goes away almost right away, and that's not the main plot point. It's all about like them being a team and like taking on this outside force together, and it's a very slow burn, and it's like very sweet, and there is some like very heavily suggestive things, but it's not ultra spicy. If you looked up the term man written by a woman in the dictionary, this book would be there. Like, there is no way that such a feminist man exists, unfortunately. Like, if every man was like this, we would have world peace. I will admit, though, I'm a little confused about the ending because the third act breakup was very weak, which makes no sense because Kelly Armstrong has written, like, 30 plus books. Like, bitch, you know how to write a novel. Like, what happened? But the ending was cute or whatever, so I had an enjoyable time reading this, but I definitely don't think it's her strongest book. And wouldn't you know it, there's actual physical proof here that I, Rachel, a model who's read, am reading my physical TBR pile, because another book that was in my secondhand book haul that I read this month and like cried over, like big cried over, like capital B, capital C, big cried over, was Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers, which is on me because now that I've like seen more about it, many people are saying this is more of like a coming of age story than it is romance, and I totally agree with that. So keep that in mind if you want to read this too. Grace Porter has always pushed herself to be the best. She has always been a high achieving student, and now that she's finally gotten her PhD in astronomy, she's feeling absolutely unmoored. But on a weekend friend's trip to Vegas to celebrate her new PhD, she gets so rip-roaring drunk that she gets married to someone and wakes up the next morning with no memory of who it is. But it turns out that she accidentally got hitched to the beautiful and creative Yuki Yamamoto, who lives across the country in New York. So running from her future career and her family and herself, she goes to New York to spend the summer with her new wife and is trying to figure out what she actually wants in life and like where she's going and like her place in the universe. This is some beautiful writing. It really captures loneliness and longing. As a fellow 29-year-old previously gifted child who recently went through an identity crisis and has a long-term girlfriend, I feel a little too perceived in this. We see Grace dealing with professional burnout and parental expectations, and also the struggles of being someone who is BIPOC in a traditionally white space. It's hard to explain that you are tired, bone deep, rib deep, belly deep tired. It's hard to explain that someone held their hand out to the stars and said all of this can be yours, and you believed it. You believed the climb and the barrier and the gate would not break for you. You spent 11 years ignoring that your mind and body said stop, breathe, be kind to yourself, and you punished yourself for ever thinking it. Don't look at me! Deep-rooted love you can have for both your friends and also your romantic partners that feels so raw and real, and it feels like your chest is getting cracked open. Great integration of the friendship dynamics and some of the side characters. Like, I love Raj and Mira and Agnes. They're all just so wonderful. And Yuki has a late night podcast talking about folklore, which like, okay girl. A beautiful story about love and acceptance and self-care. And like, this is a crisis that I would gladly recommend you. Third, from the end, is one that I unfortunately cannot talk about because Whoopsies, we're still part of the St. Martin's boycott, baby! Since St. Martin's Press has yet to acknowledge or respond to any of the demands that readers are asking of them, there is still a boycott on, and I swear I vetted this book beforehand, but it was an audiobook and it just snuck its way on because I didn't realize until after I had finished reading it that it was part of St. Martin's Press. So I can't rate it or talk about it, but I wish I really could because it was so good. It was a nonfiction book about the death industry. When St. Martin's Press gets their shit together and ends this boycott, I can't wait to talk about it. Oh my god, I forgot one. I was at work today and during my lunch break I was checking my notes app and I saw the title of a book and something clicked in my brain like, oh no, I didn't mention that. So we got one more, okay? Surprise, 11th hour edition. And I'm especially upset with myself for not remembering this one because I like to tout all the time, oh, I wear so much black and I have animal skulls in my apartment and ew, I love the death personified, the Grim Reaper can get it. And yet, for some reason, I did not talk about this necromancy-filled, death-personified fantasy novel, and it's one of the best books I read this month, and that is The Gilded Crown by Marianne Gordon, which I was sent by Harper Voyager. A sapphic, necromantic political fantasy about a girl who can traverse to the afterlife to bring back souls, but the price that death asks for gets higher each time, and though she tries to keep it a secret, rumors of her powers eventually reach the ears of the queen herself, who travels to Helivir's village and makes her forcibly resurrect her granddaughter, the crown princess, who was assassinated. And because the princess's death would cause a civil war, Helivir is then conscripted to her side at the palace to be her personal resurrector. And as she moves to the capital, Helivir's relationship with death, with herself, with her own powers, with the princess, with her family, and with the newly rising religious fanaticism of the capital forces her to kind of confront who she's become and what she will truly fight for. This book has a slow burn everything, but it's so well paced that it never feels boring. And truly, necromancy, sapphics with swords, talking raven companion, court politics, like what's not to love? Her writing is like a step out of sync with your expectations, but in a really good way. Like this kind of feels like you're in the fairy tale that's going to be told in 100 years. Marianne Gordon wrote such an intricate lore of the warfare and also of the religion and like this new monotheistic cult that's in the city along with the realms of death. And while yes, I am a sucker for death personified, this death can get it. He's tall and weirdly awkward and long, and you know I love a long, awkward, tall boy, but then also like he has this cool coat that like blends in with the shadows and his teeth never look right. He's so unnerving and I love him. I really liked following along with Helivir. Her ideas of death and rebirth are so weird and twisted, and then her brother also was a phenomenal side character that gave so much life to this book as like a parallel to her death. I didn't really like the love interest, to be completely honest. Sullivan is not my favorite, but she's also like a scheming political princess, so I get it. But it's also like, just because you're hot doesn't mean that you get to be absolved of your crimes. And Sully, they're like really bad. The ending was great. It was bittersweet and yet full of anticipation, plus some really good monologues. And as an ex-theater kid, I love a good monologue. If you'd like to read a story where you keep all your fingers, this book may not be for you. But if you like casual necromancy and folk magic and a small girl in a big city, but also who like communes with death on a regular basis, I would highly recommend this. I had a great time. Though apparently not a good enough time to remember reading it, which also is a weird dichotomy. But I swear this was good, and I did like it. Anyway, back to the video. So moving on, I think there's a very good chance of me entering my cozy fantasy era soon, because Second Last is a book that I enjoyed so damn much, and that was Can't Spell Treason Without Tea by Rebecca Thorne. A cozy sapphic fantasy about two girlfriends who abandon their responsibilities and go to this small town to open up a bookstore that sells tea. The millennial fantasy, quitting your dead-end job and running away with your lesbian lover. Reyna is one of the queen's private guards who, after an assassination attempt where she almost died, she decides that she's done serving this self-centered queen and decides to run away with Cant, her girlfriend. But Cant is one of the most powerful mages of her generation, and she knows it's only a matter of time before the magic carry pull her back to do magical duties. So the two of them decide to say, fuck this shit, and run away to a backwater town where they renovate a barn into a bookstore and cafe and are trying to like get into the town's culture while also also some dragon magic is rising and they're feeling conflicted over where their true place is. This author says that she was inspired by Legends and Lattes, and you can tell it is very Travis Baldree coded, but it also kind of feels like you're living inside of a D&D campaign. Surprisingly, some of the best, if not the best, conversations on relationship dynamics and open communication and feelings between people. I was like astounded. Reyna and Cant really love each other and it's so incredibly sweet. Like, this book feels like dad jokes and warm hugs and cups of tea. It's so heartwarming. Stop it! Also, dragons. Yeah, that's super freaking cool. Dragon magic has like a different texture and feeling. Oh my god, I'm getting too excited. And there's griffins, like magic users will ride griffins, and so we have like a pet griffin in here that's around for most of it. Great ending. It was a little anticlimactic, but at the same time I didn't mind. It felt very like end of act 1, because this is going to be a series, and I definitely want to read the rest of them. Maybe get some more tricks and tips to running away with my lesbian lover. And lastly, my favorite book of the month, hands down, was sent to me by Angry Robot Books, and this is a bloody, brooding, escape room vampire fantasy, and that is Hunter's Gambit by C.L. Perlow. In a medieval-esque fantasy world, vampires are like a thing and people know to avoid them, and our main character Kazan is a blacksmith who specializes in silver weapons. But one night a caravan that she's traveling with is attacked and the vampires steal her and take her away to their castle stronghold, where she ends up being the final piece of this magic ritual that they're performing, where they will treat her like queen of the vampires for 3 days, and when those 3 days are up they will eat her. With the clock ticking down and her prospects looking bleaker by the second, Kazan eventually strikes a bargain with 2 other sexy vampires who have their own reasons for not wanting this ritual to go through and who also want to usurp their current king. From the very beginning, I love how unhinged and awful Kazan is as a person. Like, she's smart and cunning and conniving, and eventually she does learn to take some people's feelings into consideration as well, but for the most part she's like, why would I let morals and ethics stand in the way of something that I want? That's stupid. Everybody in here is constantly backstabbing and undermining other people and going back on their word. Like, you don't know who to trust, you don't know who's good or bad, and it keeps you on your feet, and it's delicious. The lore in here is also so good. Like, we get some actual real life 1400s medieval French history in like the Feast of Fools and the King of Fools, but we also get some sick vampire lore, and there are also these things called geists that are like not dead but like not spirits, but they're not alive like they used to be. They're in between vampire and human. They're really cool. I love that we get them involved, and because this only happens over 3 days, the pacing is fast but it's consistent, and Kazan is constantly in this state of like fear and panic and worry, and the desperation and rage that's behind her is what's driving her. And I love when she finally kind of flips over to being like, I might be trapped in here with them, but they're also trapped in here with me. And from the midpoint onward, this book gets intense. It gets bloody and gory like Resident Evil. Is that you? I finished the last 100 pages of this in this like cute little easy breezy vegan cafe with the sun shining, and it was lovely. And I am reading about vampires getting sliced in half and getting their arms ripped off and like geysers of blood, people, and then people eating other people. And then when I thought it couldn't get any better, the ending was surprisingly melancholy and bittersweet in a way that I was like, whoa, wait. Why am I feeling so many feelings for these awful, infernal, undead people? Why is this happening? It's Year of the Vampire, baby, and if you are looking for a new story on seduction, sadism, and survival, I would highly recommend this book. I had a great time with it. And that's that on that. If I had a nickel for every book that I read this month that involved cannibalism, I'd have 2 nickels. If I had a nickel for every time I read a book this month about casual necromancy, I'd have 2 nickels. What a fun literary sphere I'm in right now. As always, please leave down below what you yourself read this January? Oh no, July. I also would have read more, but I have 2 other books I'm in the middle of right now, so I guess we're ramping up to have a juicy August wrap up as well. I'm also pre-filming this because this upcoming weekend is Vancouver Pride. It's the parade, it's all the events, so I will be all over the place. I'll be there, I'll be here, I'll be queer, and I will be absolutely dead by the time this upcoming weekend is over. You will be seeing this after this, so fingers crossed that I haven't simply perished. God, this weekend's gonna be a lot. I gotta like pack my backpack and like meal prep and like clean my bathroom ahead of time. I've I gotta set myself up for success this weekend. Does that involve staying up till 11:30 filming a video? Perhaps, perhaps not. You know where I click to like the video, you know where I click to subscribe. I hope you guys are all having a nice day or night or wherever you are, and I will see you all next week. Bye!